So Sam Sorbo, thank you so much for speaking with us at the Aussie Wire. We're here at the launch of the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. If someone hasn't heard of that before, what is this? Where are we?
So what I do for people is I tell them to go look at the Jordan Peterson video.
Yes.
For what Alliance for Responsible Citizenship is. But basically, it's an answer to the leftism, the leftist culture that is sort of pervading Western society right now. At least they're trying to answer it, and I tell them, because I'm in education, that if they don't address education and foundationally, none of this will matter, unfortunately, in 10 or 20 years.
Well, that argument could have been made 20 years ago, because what we've seen over the last 20 years is education becoming, the long march through the institutions. Education has without question been a target for the left. They've succeeded in what they were trying to do. I want to bring that back sorry?
They haven't succeeded yet.
They haven't, no, it's not over, but they succeeded in their objective of trying to take it over.
They have been succeeding.
That's a better way to say it.
Yes.
So here at ARC, their theme is a better story.
Yes.
What's the better story?
Oh, this is great. The better story is what I'm trying to quote the speaker from today. The better story is free markets.
Right.
That's and of course there's a story about free markets, right? The better story is the biblical narrative. That's a better story.
Sure.
And that's the story of freedom. Their story is actually submission and slavery, really, when it comes down to it. But unfortunately, they're selling a story that doesn't actually exist, which is, and Hollywood does that too. Hollywood puts together a movie and makes believe things that can't actually be real.
Yeah.
But they seem so real in the movie that you buy into all the tenets. So I was talking about this movie earlier. There's a very famous movie, and the evil guy, he's tyrannical, he's evil, he's nasty, and all of this. And in the end, they called him a Republican. But none of his actions, all of his actions were very leftist actions, communist actions. Sure. But they called him a Republican. And now we think, oh, Republicans are evil, having seen that movie. It's really what they did to, after World War II. They took the National Socialist Party, the Nazis, and they said socialism's good, it's the national part that's bad. And so they got us convinced, not me, but, right, nationalism is bad. Nationalism's not bad. Nationalism is great because then you have competing cultures, and you see what works, and what works lasts, and what doesn't work falls away. And that's free market.
So what's interesting here is just how deeply this dichotomy goes. To take your example of competing cultures, now if I was to look at your culture and say that works, I'm going to bring that into my culture. Now this is cultural appropriation, and this is evil. So it's interesting as I listen to you just how deep this dichotomy really goes.
Good.
So where did the bad story come from? The wrong story that we're now trying to tell a better story to overcome. Where did the bad story come from?
Oh, from the cultural Marxists.
Right.
Right, and it started ages ago. So it started with Karl Marx and Gramsci, and it just, and they kept improving on it or changing it to fit the times, really.
Sure.
And so now we're hopefully towards the end. We'll see. I'm not sure where it's going to go from here.
Well, you mentioned improving it as a euphemism, but changing it. One of the interesting things that I note is the revolution appears to be beginning to eat its own. And as the example, I would use Martina Navratilova, once a darling, the tennis player who was one of the first openly gay, high-profile sports persons. She was once a darling of the cause. Now she's persona non grata because she stopped at some point and everyone else kept changing.
That's correct.
We look at Germaine Greer and so many, particularly those the third wave feminist leaders now all being left behind by their own movement. What is that about? How do you have a movement that just seems to be unable to stop? It has to keep on changing its story.
The left always eats its own.
Right.
And it's a weird thing because it's like a brainwashing that happens. So in Russia, the communists, the staunch communists got to a point where they were afraid. They were actually relieved when they were finally arrested.
Wow.
because they knew they were going to be arrested for something. And then they got arrested and they were relieved. I mean, this is Solzhenitsyn who explains this. So it's this weird thing that because it's unsustainable. It's the French Revolution. Robespierre created the guillotine, said we're going to guillotine people, and then boom, he got guillotined. So it has to do that because there's no truth to it.
Yeah.
So it wants to tear down wealth. But then the people who have very little wealth, who tear down the wealth, they become the wealthy. It's not, they don't even have to get that much more wealth. They're just wealthier than everybody else. And so they get torn down.
Yeah. So from your perspective, you've traveled, from another continent to come here to be a part of ARC, to be a part of this better story. What are you hoping to see come out of this? When we leave in 2 days' time, what is this?
Okay. I'm hoping that we have some kind of an action plan. But what I really see coming out of this is people forming alliances. Because what the left has been able to do, they're in lockstep. And there's a reason that term exists. It's a leftist term, right? And we are not. People with this story, with our story, the story of freedom, it's the story of freedom. We are not cohesive at all. We are almost, self-destructive.
At each other's throats.
Yeah. And that's too bad. But I will tell you that I believe that I can lay that because I can lay most of our problems, most of our ills at the foot of the school.
Right.
And the reason I say that is because in school we learn that life is a zero-sum game. But life is not a zero-sum game. And the United States is perfect proof of that. From nothing, we were impoverished when we began. We created more prosperity for the entire world, not just for us, for the entire world, right? That's the story of freedom. So the truth is there. But because we all went to school, we learned that life is a zero-sum game. We learned that survival of the fittest is the law of the land. And therefore, you can sacrifice your honor and your virtue for $1. And that's sad because when you sacrifice honor and virtue, what you're really sacrificing is happiness.
And you can never get that back. $1, you lose $1, you can get $1 back.
But here's the good news. You can, because we also believe in forgiveness. That's also part of our story.
Sure.
And they don't.
Yeah.
That's why we have cancel culture today.
Yeah.
That's the culture of unforgiveness.
Yeah.
So since we're chatting, I'll tell you.
Sorry, can I pause you for a second? Guys, you're in the middle of our set, in the middle of an interview.
Oh dear. You're stars.
I let him plug his phone in and now I regret it. Sorry, you're about to tell me a story.
No, I'm about to tell you the most exciting thing.
Okay.
So I have a film that just opened in American theaters last night.
Right.
It's called Miracle in East Texas.
Okay.
So I make uplifting and inspirational films.
Yeah.
This film is actually the true story of the East Texas oil strike, which was the biggest oil strike in the history of the world.
And changed America completely.
It lifted communities out of poverty. It also helped us win World War II.
Right.
And so there are better stories to tell.
Yeah.
And if we can tell those stories. Now we've allowed the left to permeate Hollywood, and the left, so now the stories are lies.
Yes. Yeah,
but if we tell true stories, people will find the truth. They love the truth. They're always seeking the truth.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. And Sam Sorbo, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for speaking to the Aussie Wire here at the launch of the ARC.
SorboStudios.com.